This is Austin Liti Limits, where authors talk to authors about books and the craft of storytelling. Sponsored by Blue Ink Review, because typing the end is just the beginning. Find out more at blueinkreview.com. In this week's episode, we talk with author Cookie Boyle. Born and raised in Vancouver, Cookie began her storytelling life as a child, creating and performing brown paper bag puppet shows for her family from behind their sofa in the living room. She thought she was hilarious, but too often she would pop up in the middle of the performance to find all the chairs empty and the family off doing chores and other activities. Years later, living in San Francisco, she found a welcoming theater audience for her plays, and she spent the next 20 years writing for stage and television and traveling the world before returning to Vancouver. Entitled is her first novel. And today we want to welcome Cookie Boyle to Austin Liti Limits. Cookie, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Larry. How are you?
Oh, we're doing fine. We're doing fine. I guess the first question and the most logical place to start when we're talking about your book entitled is it's a book with a heroine that is a book. Where did you get that idea?
Well, I guess like all good ideas, it just sort of came to me wrapped in a bow from the universe, wherever these ideas come from.
Love that.
I was reading an article about a bookstore, and the bookstore left books around town on park benches, etc. And it had a note in the front of the book saying, enjoy the book, and when you're done with it, please write your name on the back of it and leave it for somebody else. And the article was about the joy these people felt when they found the book, because they felt maybe it was for me. And then reading it, they thought, great, I can enjoy the book. And then the delight they felt when they left it for the next person to have the same experience. So the article was talking about the joy of finding books. And I thought, well, how does the book feel? And I thought, oh, the book's perspective. So when I had that moment, that thought, I opened my laptop and furiously typed away to make sure I captured the idea. But it was really the premise of how does the book feel? I thought, oh, I can actually create a novel out of that. So that's how we got entitled.
I love the way that you gave the personality to the Serendipity of Snow, which is the main character, the heroine of our story within the story here. She could be loving, but she could also be kind of snide at times. Yeah. I mean, she had all of the human qualities that you might expect from a book, I suppose, or definitely an author.
Yes, I wanted the book to convey the feelings and emotions of its author, because it really is the voice of its author. In the book, the author is called Tessa McDonald. So I wanted the book to speak to the feelings that were conveyed in its pages, because that's the story it was born with. So it was important to me that the book had the ability to express emotions and communicate based on the story it was born with.
I like the way that some of the books pissed her off, and she didn't get along with them, and then others she just really got along with.
Yeah. There's, as you, just like humans, as we go through life, I wanted the book so the book starts off on a bookshelf. It's a new book. It's on a bookshelf in San Francisco, waiting for its life to begin, and it has all the expectations of what its life is going to be like, sort of like a teenager starting off in the world. And then as the book is bought, as it experiences readers, as it meets new books, and as the book is lost, loaned, or abandoned and travels around, it gains experiences. So it meets books, it learns from the other books it meets. It learns from the readers who go through its story. And the book also learns from the environment around it. So the book travels because it travels the world with its readers. So I wanted the book, like us, to gain wisdom, not always wisdom, but gain experience, sometimes wisdom, from the people and the others it meets.
So, in Entitled, the heroine of the book, Serendipity of Snow, travels a lot. Starts off in San Francisco, goes to Paris, goes to London, goes to New York before the end of the book, with a slight stopover in Minnesota, which is where Serendipity, the book, takes place. Why was travel so important to you?
I wanted to capture the experience of that innocent abroad, the hopes and aspirations we feel when we go somewhere new. We go to a new city, we go to a new country, whether we're traveling or we're moving there, and we think, oh, it's going to be different here. And in fact, we learn that, as the saying goes, wherever we go, there we are. So as you travel, you learn more about the world around you, but you often learn more about yourself. And I'd had the pleasure of living and working in San Francisco and Paris and London and New York. So I felt that I was able to capture that feeling of the hopefulness of traveling somewhere new, but also the reality of the challenges that come when you have to start again.
Well, tell me about your journey to get to the point of producing Entitled, your debut novel.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I started writing when I was living in San Francisco. I wrote a play called Young Love, inspired by the writings of Carl Jung. And so that play was produced, and I had the pleasure of sitting in the back row and hearing people laugh at what I'd written, and I was hooked. So after Young Love, then I went on to write a script, and that caught the attention of a director. And that director had me and my co-writer write a movie of the week that became the Christmas calendar that you can see every December on TV. And then we also wrote a short film called The Timekeeper, and that traveled the world in film festivals and made it to Cannes as a coup de coeur. I wrote another play called High School Diplomacy, and had the great pleasure of directing that. That was my first time directing. So had this opportunity to write different stories. But all along the way, I had entitled in the back, I was working on the novel. And then when the pandemic hit, honestly, it just gave me some time to put the finishing touches on it and getting it published. And also, with all that was going on in the world, it made me feel that maybe the world needs a little bit more humor at this moment.
Yeah, I wanted to bring in something here. Our good friends at Blue Ink Review, they described it as a smart, funny, heartfelt novel that captures the unexpected adventures in the life of a book. Did you set out to write funny?
I set out to capture the world of the book, and then the voice of the book just made me laugh. So when I started to write entitled, I knew I needed to do a few things. I knew I needed to define the world of books. So you're creating this world, and I needed to define um, what books can and cannot do, how they can communicate to each other, how they can't communicate, what they can do, what their parameters and limitations are. So I started out defining the world of the book. I knew that I wanted to write first person so we could actually know what the book was thinking and the book's perspective, and how the book's experience informed its perspective as it started out on a shelf and then is passed from reader to reader. And I knew that I also wanted to reflect the story that is in the book. So the Serendipity of Snow. So as the reader is reading the novel entitled, the reader also gets an opportunity to read some of the Serendipity of Snow. And I wanted that to be an opportunity for the novel itself to reflect on the story it was born with and gain strength from it, but also sometimes say, no, I'm not going to be like the story I was born with, which is, of course, a metaphor for us as we look at whether or not we are the story we're born with, meaning our heritage, our culture, our parents, our
Right.
societal expectations. So are we the story we're born with, or are we really the story that we create for ourselves? And that's what I was trying to convey, is that the strength you can gain from the story you're born with, but the strength you can gain from writing your own story.
So let's talk a little bit about Serendipity, the book, within the book.
Yeah.
And the inspiration for that, and why you chose that as the book you wanted to follow within Entitled.
The Serendipity of Snow is the book within the book, as you mentioned. And I wanted to have the readers follow a full journey within the book. So I started with the Serendipity of Snow as an opportunity to show the story of a young woman named Agnes, as she strives to make her own way in the world, a little bit like our book. So I wanted there to be a parallel. And so it's set in the late 1800s in Minnesota, and she is striving to move beyond the expectations of her small town, which is Rose Valley. And my grandmother, also named Agnes, used to tell me stories when I was young of growing up in a small town in the dead of winter. And so actually the story on the first page of the book of Agnes, the character, locking somebody in an outhouse in the dead of winter, that's actually a story that my grandmother told me when I was a little girl. And so to honor my grandmother, I wanted to make sure that that was the opening of the story.
How long was this idea in the back of your head before it finally turned into, the book that we know today?
Well, Larry,
Was it a long process?
as an author, yeah, this is not an overnight moment. Even Ian Rankin, the fabulous Scottish author, says it takes a year to write a book, and if it takes longer, you're spending more time not writing it, which is quite frankly, in my case, true. I was doing other things. So it was several years of writing part-time as I was doing other things, including scripts and plays and other things. So it definitely took a few years, but once I was focused on getting it to the finish line,
Right.
then it did wrap up pretty quickly. It's that focus that allowed me to get the story where it needed to be.
And where I wanted to go with that question is, are you happy with it
Ah,
after all this?
yeah, thank you. I am. I'm actually thrilled. Thank you. I when you pick up a book and it's just so sure-footed and your shoulders drop and you can just relax into the story, that's the experience I wanted for the reader. I wanted the reader to pick it up and be able to see what was happening, delight in the moments, I hope laugh, find some moments of surprise, which is the notes in the margin, follow the story of the book within the book. So it was important to me that the reader was able to go on the full journey, but feel taken care of. And
Yeah.
when I see how the book turned out, I feel like I got there.
You achieved your goals.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have written 4 novels now. I have a bad habit of starting a book and there's no way I cannot write funny. I
Yeah.
mean, that's just my personality. And one of the weirdest things was the reviews for the book before my last book was The Printer and the Strumpet, a historical satire of today's TV news stuff. But the book before that was called Deja Vu All Over Again. And I thought it was a book of redemption. And it got really, really good reviews and all of that, except that then I started getting these reviews that said, oh, this is a wonderful romance novel. And I'm going, wait a minute, I didn't write a romance novel. It was a book about redemption. And then somebody compared me to Nora Roberts.
Oh, wow.
And I'm going, well, it's great to be in that company, but that wasn't what I set out to do. But it turned out to be wildly popular, and it won an award from the Independent Book Publishers Association and all that stuff. But it was funny that it turned out to be, for a lot of readers, it turned out to be different than what I thought it was, even when it, finally got out into the public. What are you going to do?
Yeah, exactly. And, you put something out into the world, and it's for readers to determine what they get from it, right? I had one reviewer say that it gave them hope again. This was during the pandemic, of course. It gave them hope again, and it wanted them to read fiction. And it also made them feel like, which was important for them, that sometimes life takes a while to reveal itself. That's what they got out of the story. And I thought, that's great. There's so many different layers to every story. You can take from it what's important to you.
Okay. Well, I want to get to our lightning round here. 10 questions that we ask everybody. But before I do that, just very quickly, tell us what's in store for us next. What are you working on?
Oh, I've got a few things. Thanks for asking. So my co-writer and I, we have 2 scripts in development. I have my next novel is the first of a mystery series called Kindred River, set on in a fictional community on the West Coast. I also am, in the back of my mind, working on a standalone novel called Ellicott's Daughter, inspired by our short film, The Timekeeper. So Kindred River should be completed next year. And by then, I'm hoping that Ellicott's Daughter will have percolated enough in the back of my mind that it'll be ready to come out. So that's what's next for me.
Yeah, I have a list that is like forever long of story ideas, maybe a couple that I've written, opening paragraphs and things like that, just more or less to put them into a file.
Yeah.
I have no shortage of ideas. Now, talent, we'll see. We'll see. All right.
That's not what the reviewers say, Larry.
Well, the reviewers like me, so I guess it's okay.
There you go.
Yeah. All right. So now it's time for the Austin Liti Limits lightning round, which is an idea that we stole from inside the actor's studio. And don't worry, they stole it from other people. So we figure it's fair game.
Go for the best, yeah.
All right. So 10 questions. The first question is, what's your favorite word?
Well, perhaps not surprisingly, my favorite word is serendipity. I love the cadence of it. I love the meaning of it, I love the hope it gives people. So it's my favorite word. My second favorite word would be welcome. When you travel the world and sometimes you're feeling a little bit lost, not knowing quite where you're going, and somebody greets you and says, welcome, your shoulders just drop and feel like it's going to be okay. So that's my second favorite word.
Great. What is your least favorite word?
My least favorite word is no. I find so often we hear no because people don't want to take the time to understand or consider the idea. It may be either intellectual or emotional laziness, but sometimes it's just from a place of, I'm tired, I don't even want to think about it. So I think no is my least favorite one.
What turns you on?
So many things. I love an idea, getting a new idea, and my husband and I will sit around and talk and build on that idea, develop a world where this idea could live, develop plots and characters. So the banter between my husband and I as we're building stories together, that is just a joy.
I do the same thing with my wife, Kim, but frequently I'll explain to her what I'm thinking in terms of the story, and she'll go, well, I guess it's all in the execution, which means the idea itself didn't really click. But anyway, all right. So our next question is, what turns you off?
taxes, not the concept of taxes, but doing taxes, the receipts, the details, like, what was this for? Can we write that off? Like taxes. Doing taxes makes me crazy.
Yeah, you would never be an accountant, I
No,
suppose.
no, 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 no.
No. All right. So then the next question is, what's your idea of happiness?
Uh,
You
uh,
kind of explained this a moment ago, but
yeah,
still, in the broader sense, what's your idea of happiness?
not doing taxes, that's for sure. My idea of happiness is having the time to write. You know, time is just the greatest luxury of all. So having the time to write is just my idea of happiness.
Who is your favorite author?
Oh, there's so many. A favorite writer, I would say, is Nora Ephron. I think every word, every thought she had was just genius. So whether we know her for screenplays, but of course she's written books as well. And what a great loss. Um, so Nora Ephron, again with humor, really appreciate Nick Hornby, and love E.M. Forster. I love that innocent abroad writing the characters that he captures.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Nick Hornby too.
Yeah.
Really enjoy his work.
Yeah.
If you could be a character from any novel throughout history, who would you want to be?
Well, speaking of E.M. Forster, I think I'd be Lucy Honeychurch in A Room with a View. I loved her feistiness and her spirit and her passion, and her need to fight social convention to get what she wanted. I loved that in her.
If you could pick any profession to pursue other than writing or what you are doing, what would that be?
I'd like to be a baker and have a bakery.
A baker.
Yeah, well, with a name like Cookie, people expect you to bake, and when I do have the time to bake, it's a little bit like writing something that people laugh at, that joy you feel, that shared connection. And so when you bake something that somebody really enjoys, I love that. I love the feeling of seeing them enjoy what you've created, and the delight they take in that. So I'd be a baker.
I have a sneaky suspicion I know the answer to this one, but what profession would you absolutely not want to do?
Yeah, certainly a tax accountant, or like a corporate lawyer. It's the same thing. It's that kind of, paragraph 7 subsection D point 1.7, like that kind of detail. It makes me crazy. I think it'd be a good mediator. I love talking to people and finding common ground, but that kind of detail for corporate law and legal documents, I would be terrible at it.
Yeah. Okay, so now our final question, drum roll, please. If heaven exists, what would you like God to say to you when you get to the check-in desk?
Ooh, the check-in desk. I would like to hear, hey, you did well with what you were given in this life. And I'd like to hear, there's some people there waiting to welcome you.
Wonderful. All right, Cookie Boyle, author of Entitled. Thank you very much for joining us on Austin Liti Limits.
Thank you for having me, Larry. It's been a delight and a half.
This has been a presentation of Austin Liti Limits, made possible with help from our good friends at Blue Ink Review, where typing the end is just the beginning. Find out more at blueinkreview.com.